What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamecite Chronicles, the console gaming podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode number 35. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in last week, and I hope you guys have had a good weekend. Doing well, maybe got some gaming in, maybe watched some college football or NFL, if you're into that. Here in the Pacific Northwest, I gotta say, it's been beautiful. We're graciously blessed with still warm weather. It's been like getting in the 80s, which is kind of unheard of for this time of year. And I just know that in any moment, I feel like the rainy season is upon us and it's just going to be dark and cloudy and rainy every day for the next 6 months. But I am holding on to this beautiful sunshine that I'm currently looking out at. I love it. I love it. And with that, I'm also trying to get in as much golf as I can, whether it be at the range or, trying to get out at least once or twice a week when I can, because I know once rainy season starts, it's going to be pretty hard to do. So got to get that in where I can, hopefully, Now, right at the top, though, I want to start it off with the question. Question to you all out there, question of the week. What are some of your favorite scary games? Now, Halloween, we're in spooky season. Halloween is upon us. And I thought this would be a fun topic to cover. And I want to do that next week. So let me know in the comments, hit me up on Twitter, whatever you got to do. Let me know what some of your favorite scary games are so we can kind of cover those. And then I want to share kind of I'm thinking like a top 10 list, scary video games, just to kind of celebrate and get in the Halloween spirit, kind of that spooky season. I figured that would be a fun topic to cover. So that's my question to you all. Hit me up. I would love to hear from you. I want to get you guys involved, get you into the show, and hear some of your game recommendations for scary video games to kind of get in that Halloween spirit, the Halloween mood. And, I've kind of been thinking about it. Like, I kind of want to play one of them. And I've got one in mind that's kind of short and I think will fit in perfect, that I might be able to fit in next week and talk about. So I think we'll do that. One I've been wanting to play for a while. It's kind of a little bit older, from the Xbox One and PS4 generation, but I think it might be time to finally jump in and play it. I've heard good things. It's been on my list. So that's what we're going to do for next week's episode. So please let me know. And also, I have to say thank you yet again for the support of the show. I've been seeing some huge and consistent activity. The podcast downloads, a little bit less on YouTube, but definitely for the podcast and the episode itself, it's just been phenomenal. So thank you guys for that. I really do appreciate it. To all the new listeners out there, welcome. Happy to have you here and would love to hear from you. So please get involved. Speaking of getting involved and being new to the show, remember, the best way to support the show is to leave us a rating on the podcast platform that you're listening on. Helps the show out, gets us into the algorithms, helps people find the show easier, and I would much appreciate that. You can join me over on Locals. GamesiteChronicles.locals.com. You can listen to the podcast over there. It might start doing some exclusive benefits or releasing the episode early on that platform. So stay tuned for that. I've been still toggling that in my mind. Haven't had a ton of time to kind of think about the details and get a schedule going, but more to come on that. You can follow me on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. And remember to catch new episodes of the show each and every week, Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now for this week's episode, I have a feeling it's going to kind of be shorter, but I kind of want to talk about some news items that dropped. Got several stories /topics that I wanted to cover. And I know there's a bunch of drama still going on with the Xbox Activision Blizzard I can't talk. With the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition. That's kind of a mouthful. But I know there's some drama on that because I think it's over in the UK regulators. They're reviewing it right now. And it's interesting because with some of this stuff, you're kind of getting behind the scenes look at how things work and maybe some past deals and kind of what they're looking into from a regulatory standpoint. And so there's a lot of drama fodder there. I got to be honest. I'm kind of getting tired of talking about it, which is why I didn't want to bring it up this week. I wanted to do something, keep it a little different. And I think we have some interesting news stories to cover anyways. So I think we're fine there, but I just want to acknowledge that kind of getting tired of it. And, maybe we'll talk about it in the next week or two. Well, in a couple weeks when I'm sure even more drama will unfold, but it is what it is. And so I don't really want to add to that flame more. Also, I know there was some news about Starfield that came out, and I was originally going to talk about it and check out their developer video they put out on some of the dialogue and kind of what the direction they're going with that game. But it was just kind of this doesn't interest me enough to really bring it up on the show. Yes, I'm excited for Starfield. I'll check it out when it drops, but I'm not that excited to dive into one of their developer videos about their dialogue options and how much more dialogue this has over even Skyrim or whatever. That's cool, bro. That's great. I'm good. You know what I mean? So hopefully that doesn't hit you all the wrong way, but that's just kind of where I'm sitting on those two topics. But the main topic I wanted to talk about this week is actually some news that dropped this morning. And I kind of had to rearrange a few topics on the show because I was like, I want to talk about this. I think this is interesting. And that is some news around Gotham Knights performance on consoles. So we'll dive into that. I also want to touch on Arkane. They confirmed something about some of their recent games. So we'll cover that. Scorn is out officially. So I want to take a look at some of those reviews. And there was this new trailer for a PS1 looking game that just dropped that I kind of want to give a shout out to because I think it looks very, very interesting. Now, before we get into any of that, let's talk about the games that we're playing. And as always, remember to write in and let me know what games you've been playing so we can talk about it on the show. Just like our buddy Xerxes did, who yet again wrote into the show. Thank you, Xerxes. I really appreciate that. But this time, not necessarily about what he's playing, but rather watching. So still kind of relevant as we've oftentimes talked about shows, gaming related shows or movies that we check out. And we're getting a ton more of them here in the next year. So that'll definitely be a regular on the show. But he says, I just finished Cyberpunk Edgerunners anime. And I got to say, you guys got to check it out because it's fantastic. Hands down, made me want to play Cyberpunk 27. But alas, my hardware is not strong enough for that game just yet. He has PS4, Switch, and a potato PC. So Xerxes, thank you for that. As I mentioned last week, I've been watching the show too. And I think I just got through episode 9, got one episode left. And yeah, I agree. I think it's great. Like I said, it's for me, it's very well done. Love the art style. I think it's very fitting with the cyberpunk world and universe. And I kind of get those Cowboy Bebop vibes with it, with kind of the way just the presentation of it. So it's great. I think it's very well done. There have a couple moments where I'm like, trying to kind of follow a couple things and all that, but I think it's awesome. Definitely up there as one of the better Netflix anime shows, I should say. I still got to say, I think Castlevania is much better, but Cyberpunk is up there. It's awesome. And because I'm also simultaneously playing the game, because I've just kind of been, I want to get engulfed into this world and I've just kind of fallen into the cyberpunk fever. It's kind of cool to see that the level of detail in the show matches what you see in the game. Like the calls, the guns, like the gun designs and the styles, the sounds, all those stuff is all the same. They match the game perfectly. So I love that. That's great. That's a really cool detail that they have in the show that I appreciate because I'm playing the game simultaneously. So kudos to Netflix and the guys who are putting on that show because I think it's fantastic. Also, speaking of things that we've watched that are gaming related, I finally watched the Uncharted movie, which is currently also on Netflix. I gotta say, I went in with low expectations and I came out thinking that it was fine. I mean, it has some fun moments. It's definitely kind of that popcorn, blockbuster, summer action-y type movie. It's got some laughs in there, all that stuff, it's fine. I walked away. I was like, all right. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, even going in with those low expectations. So I'll say this, if they did a sequel, sure, I would check it out. You know what I mean? Now, I'll stay spoilers free, but there was one character that showed up in the movie, and I thought they did a good job with that character, and I didn't expect that character to show up, so I liked that. That's pretty cool. And that character actually played a pretty significant role, I think, in the story. And then Tom Holland, he was fine as Nathan Drake, I guess. It's just kind of hard not to see Spider-Man though, because I mean Spider-Man is such an iconic role, and Marvel is so big that it's hard not to see that. And then Mark Wahlberg, I'm not feeling that. I did not feel him as Sully. Not only is there no classic mustache and cigar, but Mark Wahlberg is just one of those actors to where I feel like his persona is bigger than that role. Therefore, it's not Sully, it's Mark Wahlberg. You know what I mean? So I just wasn't really feeling that. I also, and this isn't a spoiler, this is kind of how I feel, but I feel like it kind of just ended. Maybe to leave room for a sequel or something like that, but it just kind of, I don't know, it didn't wrap up as kind of a nice and tidy like the games do, I guess. So that kind of was a little off-putting to me, but either way, I finally watched it. Let me know what you think about it if you have watched it as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get another sequel. I think Sony's kind of definitely all in on turning their games into these movie and TV show franchises. So it also kind of makes me want to replay the games because those games are so damn good. But who's got time for that? Now, video games. What have I been playing? Cyberpunk. I mentioned it already, but I'm playing Cyberpunk. I'm now about probably 17 hours, at least according to the game clock, which I think is about right. Though maybe a little inflated because, time spent in menus or just pause when maybe I'm looking up. I had to look up a couple things. So, maybe a little inflated, but that's where I'm at. I'm really digging the story. Finally met Keanu's character. Awesome. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Finally kind of figuring out some of the hacking systems in the breach mini game, kind of figuring that out. It's just there's so many systems and different like things and kind of customizable pieces, and there's really a lot to this game. And I finally feel like I'm getting up to speed. As per usual with most open world games, though, I did get sidetracked and distracted with a bunch of side quests. I have to say my favorite ones so far are the Cyber Psycho hunts. So these are basically where, so a thing in Cyberpunk is where if you get too much, they call it chrome, but like machine parts, put on your body, that it can turn you psycho. And I forget, there are various ways it can do that because it messes with your system and all. So if you could react to it wrong and you turn psycho. And so you hunt down some of these folks that have turned into cyber psychos. And they're all kind of different. One of them was really, really cool where they were basically trying to do this ritual. And it was kind of this really almost ominous area. And I actually encountered a bug here. Actually a game breaking bug because I had to restart it. So the psycho dude never came out, even though I was looking for him in this area, and he just never came out. And I guess if you do something in that mission out of order, which I did, that will cause the bug to happen. Because I excited to look that up. So that was disappointing. But those cyber psycho ones are fun because you find them and then you got to take them out, and some of them are pretty challenging, some of them are a little bit easier. But I'm really enjoying those quite a bit. Outside of that game-breaking bug, which was disappointing, there's a few other bugs that I've encountered. I think I mentioned this before, but there's a laptop bug where, because you can log into like laptops or open computers that are in the environment. And so I would log into these and you can actually, go into the security system and look through the cameras and kind of scope out an environment, which that's what I want to do. I want to log into the cameras, kind of see what's in front of me, kind of, highlight the enemies, and then I want to shut them all down. But when I back out of the cameras, the cursor's gone and I can't do anything with that laptop anymore. Even if I close it, all that stuff. So it's a minor inconvenience because you can still like hack into the individual cameras and shut them off that way. But still kind of disappointing nonetheless. The other thing about this game, and I kind of made myself a note of this because I thought it was just really interesting, kind of neat. I had a really fun random encounter with a vending machine. It was a vending machine AI. And I was leaving, like, I think the main apartment building, about to hop on my bike. And all of a sudden I hear this AI, like this vending machine calling me out. It's like, hey, you, come over. And I'm like, what? And I was like, is that thing talking to me? Sure enough, it was this AI vending machine. And I went over. He ended up telling me a joke, which is kind of funny. And then he gave me a soda for free. And that was it. That was our interaction. Just totally blue, out of the blue, totally random. This vending machine just calls me over, tells me a random joke, and gives me a free soda. Like, how cool is that? I don't know. I just thought, like, it was such a neat little, it's like one of those, it kind of reminds me of like Red Dead or Grand Theft Auto, where you have these like random encounters with NPCs or various characters that in and of themselves are their own little stories. And that's what makes these games so interesting, is you have so many of these kind of oddball encounters or happenings in these games that make for fun stories to kind of tell your friends. And that was one for me in Cyberpunk. So I wanted to share that with you guys because I just thought it was kind of neat. But like I said, I'm enjoying the game. I want to continue playing it. And, obviously I want to see it through. We're starting to get into, fall gaming season. There's a couple games coming up that I really want to dive into. One of which comes out, I think, next week, which is actually on Tuesday at the time of this recording. And that's Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, which is that asymmetric multiplayer game. I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. Like, that's my childhood right there, is Ghostbusters. And this game, I think, looks really fun. So I do want to give it an honest go. And then I know we have Bayonetta 3, we got God of War, and then Callisto Protocol. Those are kind of the main ones that I'm thinking of too. So got to fit them all in and find the time. There's also some smaller games too. So lots to play, not enough time. I also was playing a little Splatoon 3, finally started the single player component. Just played a level or two in bed. I'm still not through like the first boss or anything, but it's very similar to the first two games in terms of structure and kind of how it's laid out and what you do. So, I'll continue that, but if I have anything new to report, I'll let you guys know. Nothing really new on that front. So let's get into the news. Some of those news items that I wanted to touch on, starting with Arkane. And so apparently Dishonored and Deathloop are in the same universe. So as part of this article on Push Square, where the developer from Arkane Studios confirmed that these games are indeed connected, the studio's creative director, Digna Bakaba, I don't know if I'm saying that right, so my apologies. He made the confirmation on the latest episode of the Xbox podcast and stated that Deathloop is, quote, one of the futures of the Dishonored world, end quote. He also further stated, quote, we envision Deathloop to be happening in the future after Death of the Outsider, end quote. Which apparently Death of the Outsider is a standalone DLC for Dishonored 2. I had completely forgotten about that, and I kind of want to go play that now because I love those games. And I never played that one, so I might go see how much that is and see how long it is and if it's worth jumping into. Bakaba also mentioned that there's apparently a little logo on the side of the Heritage shotgun in Deathloop. That's the Dunwall Tower. And therein lies an obvious connection. Now, I got to say, I think this is pretty neat. I think it's fun when, you get fans that kind of theorize the connection between different properties and it's eventually confirmed. Turns out to be true. I think that's cool. And because I like Arkane, I like both Dishonored and Deathloop. I think this is kind of neat. And I think you could also say that maybe this is just an easy way for them to kind of avoid the criticism of using, similar abilities or kind of reused ideas between their games, because Dishonored and Deathloop's abilities are very much the same. There's a lot of similarities between quite a few of them. So just different names. So, maybe you could make that argument, so they can avoid that criticism. But at the same time, like, who cares, right? I also think that's kind of their signature, right? They have that signature gameplay. They have that unique art style and character design. That's Arkane. That's what those games are. And quite frankly, I like that. So, yeah. Now, I will say this it kind of makes me think that I would absolutely love to see Dishonored 3. I don't think I'm alone in saying that because I love all the Dishonored games, even that kind of standalone one that they did. The name escapes me, but I liked them all. Dishonored 1, Dishonored 2, and then that other one. Great games. I would love to see a Dishonored 3. But, after, I think it was earlier this year, Arkane came out and said they're more interested in making kind of more, quote, open games and kind of seemingly shifting their focus to co-op and multiplayer as we're seeing with Redfall. So, and, under new ownership with Microsoft and Xbox, I doubt we'll ever see that, which is so unfortunate. It's such a shame because Dishonored is genuinely a great franchise. And we may never see it come back. It's kind of a bummer, but they're on to doing new things. Deathloop I thought was great. That's great. And then Redfall, I'm super excited for. That's probably my most anticipated Xbox game in the next year. Over Starfield, because I like Arkane. I like what they bring to the table. I like their art style, and I think it looks fun after watching that gameplay from, I think, their summer showcase over at Xbox. So I thought this was pretty cool. I wanted to bring it to the table, kind of highlight it. It's nothing that's groundbreaking or shattering, but I thought it was neat. So next, let's talk about Scorn. Scorn is finally out on Xbox and PC. It's on Game Pass, if you're a subscriber to that. And I think it's safe to say that this is probably the biggest fall exclusive for Xbox. Now that, Starfield and Redfall moved out of 2022. And I also think it's fair to say that quite a few folks were looking forward to this, or at least looking forward to checking it out. Because this is kind of there's a lot of marketing behind that from Xbox. I've seen online through, social media promoting this game. And so I think this is a big exclusive for Xbox. I don't think that's unfair to say at all. And for me, as I've mentioned, I still don't really know what this game's about. And we touched on it a few episodes ago after they released, I think it was a 7 or 8 minute gameplay trailer for Scorn. And I watched it and I still really have no idea what this game is or kind of what the end goal or objective of it is. And it doesn't really speak to me. So it's not something I've ever really been looking forward to or something I'm like dying to check out, maybe at some point, but there's so many other games right now. I'm just like, I'm good. This isn't something I think I really feel like I need to play. Like I'm actually more interested in Pentiment from Obsidian that's coming out, that kind of smaller exclusive title. I'm much more looking forward to that than this. So if that gives you any indication. But given that it's all out, reviews have started to surface online, and they kind of seem like they're all over the place. So I wanted to take this segment to let's go through those. Kind of understand what the lay of the land in this game is all about. Because there's so many question marks around it. Because it's like a horror game, but then there's lots of gore. It's kind of got this alien aesthetic, and it's just, I don't know. It's really, really weird. So let's start at Metacritic. It's a pretty standard way of looking at games in terms of, user scores and critic scores. And so the Xbox version of Scorn has a critic score of 71, which only has 4 reviews up there at the time of this recording, I should say, which is kind of crazy. Seems kind of small. And then a user score of 7.1, so essentially the same thing at 10 ratings. Again, not that many. So I don't know if maybe not a lot of people have posted their stuff yet, or the game did just come out yesterday at the time of this recording, but usually reviews go up faster than that. I don't know. I thought that was really interesting. So I want to call that out because that's important when you talk about scores, averages, etc. So that's not too bad, I would say. It's on the good end of the spectrum. Now over at GameSpot, they kind of do these review roundups for games. So I like to check those out. So where they grab kind of some of the major media outlets and kind of what their scores were. GameSpot gave this a 4 out of 10. That's not good. They said, let's see, the restrictive saves and unbalanced combat combined to make much of Scorn's adventure a frustrating slog, betraying the initial promising opening hours that emphasize puzzle solving and atmosphere above everything else. Even with the disappointing smaller puzzles, the overarching ones that are the centerpieces of each act are satisfying to slowly put together, but not captivating enough to distract them from the brutally unfair challenges along the way. And it goes on for a couple more sentences, but really, really interesting stuff there. Really interesting. Because here's the next one. PC Gamer, 80 out of 100, or 8 out of 10. They said, Scorn in a word rocks. It meaningfully uses its high-end art and rendering resources. Instead of 200 gigabytes of Battle Royale maps or the most realistic simulation of Ronald Reagan's jowls the world has ever seen, Scorn presents something more deliberately, artistically upsetting. A truly alien world, one that by turns surprised, sickened, and genuinely moved me. So, I mean, that person kind of looked at it from a more technical lens, and he liked what he saw. IGN gave it a 7 out of 10 and says, if Scorn were much longer than it is, I think it would have overstayed its welcome. But the fact that it's such a bite-sized sprint through the grisly and surreal made it memorable and satisfying. Interesting. Actually, I'm curious, how long is this game? Let's go to howlongtobeat.com. Highly recommend that website. I use it on the regular. Scorn. Okay, so it says on average to do main plus a little extra of exploration of the main story plus exploration, about 5.5 hours. So not that long, actually. And that actually intrigues me because I like shorter games. That's a win in my book. Let's see. Games Hub, 4 out of 5. They say, I certainly don't enjoy Scorn in the way that I do most video games. The thought of revisiting its monstrous world makes me feel ill. But I respect Scorn for its technical artistry, design, and environmental world building that successfully encourages player agency and how strong and cohesive it feels in its overall creative vision despite its mentally and physically taxing nature. Oof, that's a lot. VGC, love that website. 2 out of 5. Scorn has one of the most beautiful worlds you'll see in a game if you can see beauty in the grotesque. It's just a shame that the world is also home to a frustrating, puzzle-heavy adventure filled with aimless wandering. Interesting. And then Game Rant, finally on here, 1 out of 5. Finishing Scorn does not leave players with a sense of satisfaction. It's not scary, and it's not fun. Most will be glad that it's over. And at least it's mercifully short. It only takes about 5 hours to beat Scorn, as we just talked about. And our playthrough ended us earning 11 out of 12 of the game's achievements. Wow, that's not very many. Scorn gives players absolutely no reason to return to it, and quite frankly, it doesn't offer much reason to play it even once. Damn, that's rough. So really interesting. I mean, like I said, all over the place. When we look at some of these major media outlets, I find this fascinating stuff. Now, the last thing I want to do is go to the Xbox Marketplace. And one of the things I didn't realize on the Xbox Marketplace, at least on their website on a computer, is they have user review scores. Which, hello, PlayStation, hello, Nintendo, do this. Steam does this. This needs to happen. And it's funny because I was actually going to talk about that I changed out because of the Gotham Knights topic, but I changed out the main topic of this week's episode because I was going to talk about the console storefronts and how much of a shit show it is right now, especially when you talk about game curation or lack thereof. But we'll save that topic for another day. But shout out to Xbox for having user reviews on their storefront. So I went to the Scorn page to look at their user reviews. They have about approximately 1,500 total reviews, and it's sitting at a 3. So in the middle here, which makes sense because 5-star reviews, 33% of the reviews were 5-star, 33% were 1-star. So very divisive. This is a very split game. Let's see. So a couple reviews here. So this person gave it 5 stars. This says, love it. Work of art. Every corner of this world so far, I get distracted, soaking up the sights, taking it all in. On Game Pass 2 in October, a perfectly seasonally themed game to enjoy the Halloween spirit. I'm going to pause right there, actually. That's interesting. That the fact that they mentioned Game Pass, I think, tells you it's the Game Pass effect. Now, if this person would have paid the game's price, $40, would they feel the same? I don't know. I would think not, because they mentioned Game Pass, meaning there was very little barrier of entry for them to try this game out. So therefore, your expectations are lower because you didn't really have much money invested into it. Something to think about, right? I think that's interesting. Let's see. This person, 5 stars. Would be better if it had if I had more than 2 brain cells. He said it was thoroughly confusing, but gave it 5 stars. Oh, that's funny. Let's see. 2 stars here. Doug told you. I don't know what that means. Literally, one of the trailers tells you this game isn't a shooter, so stop acting shocked. Let's see. 2.5 stars. Boring AF. I had hopes for this game, art direction, but wow. No. Just a minimalist, boring ass game where you wandering around trying to figure out what the blank to do. Dang. So, let me see if I guess I'll do a couple more. Just want to see, just to kind of get. Here's a 5-star one. Unique horror puzzles. Impressed with this title. Seems obtuse at first glance, but really comes together. The first puzzle was nuts, start to finish, and the game keeps on that path. Perseverance is rewarded with exciting moments. People calling it too confusing have never solved anything without a guide. Here's another 5-star one. Not for the faint-hearted. Unique and unsettling. Puzzles are challenging and force you to face your fears. Combat is a puzzle in itself, but you will feel like a true part of this gross world when it finally clicks. Highly recommended. This is highly recommend this one with the lights off and headphones on. So it seems like the puzzle components, which this game seems to be primarily less of a scary survival horror type game and just a puzzle game, like an atmospheric puzzle game, I think is probably the best way to describe this based on what I'm seeing here. And the difficulty of the puzzle seems to be the big differentiator between the reviews, which that's fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating to me. Because you get some people who, obviously it clicked for them and they found something within this game, were able to enjoy it. And then others to where something just didn't click and maybe they were still able to get through the game, but they just weren't feeling it. And therefore it's a very divisive game. I mean, you can see that even in user reviews where half of the reviews, I say a third of the reviews are a 5-star and the other third are 1 star. And then the other third is split between 2, 3, and 4 stars, which is why it sits at 3. I think it's really interesting stuff, especially when you get the media outlets being all over the place, from a 1 to a 2 to a 40 to a 70, even to an 80. It's just crazy. So this is a really interesting game. And again, I don't think it's for me. I like the fact that it's short. So, it's something I could dive into and not have to worry about, spending too much time into, but this doesn't really sound like a game I would be interested in. I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think. Have you tried Scorn? Does this game look appealing to you? I don't know. Part of me is like, oh, this is another one of those Xbox titles, Xbox exclusive titles, where it's just kind of in this middle of the pack. Nothing really that exciting about it. But there are lots of people out there that seem to be enjoying it. So, good on them. Again, to my point earlier, is the Game Pass effect here? Are these reviews better than what they would have been if they'd just paid for the game because they're getting it with their subscription? I don't know. But if you're out there and you're enjoying it, that's awesome. So it doesn't seem like this game's going to be for everyone, and that puzzle factor seems to be the differentiator between the good reviews and the bad reviews. So I don't know, man. Pretty interesting stuff, I have to say. Now, the next story was a new game trailer dropped for a game called Signalis. This new trailer dropped just this week. I saw it on Push Square, but I'm pretty sure you can look it up on YouTube. Or actually, no, I saw it on PlayStation. Excuse me. PlayStation, I think, highlighted the game. But you can check it out probably in a couple different outlets. And Signalis is a 32-bit style survival horror game. So think along the likes of Resident Evil, the original Resident Evil. Now, the trailer is just under a minute and a half and shows various snippets of gameplay. And the game is clearly inspired by Resident Evil in terms of, style, movement, shooting, item management, and even its enemies, which I think is cool. I think this game looks really dang cool. Like, genuinely. I remember seeing this actually, I think it was early at the beginning of the year or a while ago, and thinking this game looks really neat and I want to keep an eye on it. And it comes out October 27th, so end of the month, perfect time, right before Halloween. And like I said, it looks really, really cool. I don't know what else to say about it. You have to go check it out. Genuinely. I think it's going to be $20 when it launches. And I'd like to say I would jump into it right away, but that period, the end of October, is just jam-packed. So we got, games like Mario and Rabbids, that comes out, I think, right around that time, or actually a week before that. Bayonetta comes out right around that time, and then like 2 weeks later, God of War Ragnarok comes out. So I don't know if there's time for this one right when it comes out, but I did put it on my wish list, and I do want to keep an eye out for it and play it eventually because I think it looks really, really cool. It's interesting to see because we've seen this indie surgence of like 8-bit and 16-bit games. Think of like Celeste, Shovel Knight, some of the great ones. But we've never really seen anything in the kind of the 32-bit space. And so this is in that. It looks very much like a PS1 game, but kind of modernized a bit, a little bit smoother, cleaner graphics and art direction. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, if this game is, successful in a degree, are we going to see more games like this, kind of mirroring the early PS1 and maybe even, I know 64 is 64-bit, but like the N64 era, like, are we going to see more games kind of mirror those eras? Like, that sounds kind of cool. I like that idea because now I love the 8-bit and 16-bit games, 100%. Love those. But because this game looks so good, I kind of like the idea of exploring that area a little bit more. Now, they all might not look the prettiest. I mean, you go look back at some of those early PS1. Look at Metal Gear Solid. That game does not look good at all. Or even the original Final Fantasy VII. And then some of the Nintendo 64 games. They just don't look that great. But thinking about some of those style of games in kind of the modern era, I don't know. I think it's intriguing, so I kind of like this idea. One of the other things I spotted on Twitter was that someone, I think he was a journalist who had previewed the game, Signalis, said that the game is also coming to Game Pass. I haven't seen any news of that, but that could be interesting little tidbit. He said it's $20, also coming to Game Pass. So we shall see when it comes out. Again, game's called Signalis. Comes out October 27th. And I believe it's for all platforms, not just PlayStation. So keep an eye out for that one, genuinely, because it looks awesome. So now let's get into the big news story, and that is about Gotham Knights. So I woke up this morning and saw some news that everyone was tweeting about, that everyone was picking it up, posting articles about it. And that is that the upcoming title, Gotham Knights, does not include a performance mode and runs at a max of 30 frames per second on console. And I think this is big news because Gotham Knights is probably one of the bigger fall games that are coming out. You put it up there with like Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2. You put it up there with Callisto Protocol. You put it up there with God of War. Like, this is a big AAA game, and it's got DC behind it. It's especially coming after the Arkhane games. It's in that same vein, albeit not directly. It's not Batman. It's the other Batman characters. I think there's a lot of people looking forward to this. I think this is a big game. And the studio behind this, which, gosh, what is it? Oh, WB Montreal. I don't know why I blanked on that, but it's not Rocksteady. It's WB Montreal, and then I think their last game was, outside of some help, I think, on Arkham Knight and maybe a couple other smaller games, but their last full game, I think, was Arkham Origins on the PS3. So it's been a long time since they put out a game. So it's really interesting. So like I said, a lot of people were picking it up. I'm going to go to VGC, Video Games Chronicle, to read the quote that the developer put out. That way we can see the context. So it was Floor Marty who posted on the game's Discord server, And they said, I know many of you are wondering about the availability of a performance mode for Gotham Knights on consoles. Due to the types of features we have in our game, like providing a fully untethered co-op experience in our highly detailed open world, it's not as straightforward as lowering the resolution and getting a higher FPS. For this reason, our game does not have a performance/quality toggle option and will run at 30 FPS on consoles. End quote. So there it is. Because they have a fully untethered co-op experience in a highly detailed open world, they're not able to achieve that higher frame rate. And it's like, I hear you. I hear what they're saying, but I find this news incredibly disappointing. Like, I feel like this is just another negative on this game already. Because I think earlier this year, around the beginning of summer, it might have been Summer Games Fest or something like that, where we saw kind of some of the first look at the gameplay, showed us a couple different characters, saw the combat, and a lot of people were criticizing that. Kind of looked stuttery. Combat looked a little, magnetic almost, where you're kind of just zipping around, clinging to other people. And I don't know. I think there was some criticism there. And one of the other things I think a lot of people noticed, myself included, is that there seems like there's kind of this, almost these RPG elements kind of thrown into this game. They don't really seem to fit, almost like looter shooter elements. Because I think there was item rarity. There's kind of that Destiny style menu. There's, a bunch of leveling up, and I don't know. It just gives like, why is all this stuff injected into the Batman, like a Batman game? Like, if I remember correctly, you do level up in the original Arkham games, but it's not like an RPG to where, you're leveling up to kind of unlock different abilities. Which I guess you could argue is, RPG-like to a certain degree, but not looter shooter-like. And that's kind of the vibes I'm getting from Gotham Knights. Like, why would you shoehorn those types of things in this game? Almost reminds me of what they did with Avengers. Why? Why would you do that? I don't understand. So I just feel like this is another thing kind of going against this game, at least in my opinion. And the other thing I think that makes it disappointing is that I feel like one of the big tenets of this generation of consoles, with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, is getting 60 FPS games. I feel like that's the new standard. That kind of is the standard. That's kind of at least the target that everyone's kind of shooting for. And to not have that kind of puts you not really at the kind of minimum level that I think a lot of people are hoping for. And that's kind of what consumers expect these days, at least on their hardware. Now, I'm no dev, and I'm not even going to pretend to understand all the technicalities and everything that goes into making a game, because I know it's very complex, especially at the AAA level. There's a lot that goes into it. And I respect that to full degree. Like, I would love to learn some of that stuff at some point, because I find it fascinating. And I'm sure what they say is true with, what the direction they've tried to go with their open world and having this cooperative mechanic in there. I get it, but that doesn't make it less disappointing. And that doesn't mean that consumers can't be upset about that, because again, I think the consumer expectation is that games are 60 FPS now on these new machines. So I think you have to understand that. And if you can't reach that, kind of minimum standard that consumers expect, I think you have to convince them in other ways that your product is of value to them. Basically, you have to sell the product a different way, kind of shift direction from, we may not do this, but here's what we do, and kind of put the focus on that. Maybe that's what they're trying to do. I just don't think it's working per se, because everyone's tagging on to like, oh, this game's not running at 60 FPS. It's 30 FPS. What? That type of thing. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is, remember, this game was originally going to come out for the PS4 and the Xbox One. There were PS4 and Xbox One versions until they were scrapped earlier this year, I think around May. is when it was announced that those versions are axed. So now it's just next gen only. Kind of makes sense now, doesn't it? If this game is struggling on a performance level, given all the things that they're trying to do and capping it at 30 FPS on consoles, could you imagine what the PS4 and Xbox One version of those games look like? They're probably broken as heck. Broken AF. They probably don't even work. It's probably worse than maybe what Cyberpunk did. Because Cyberpunk actually released it. And it's funny because like that whole Cyberpunk fiasco with the last gen versions was such an eye-opener to I think a lot of developers out there to like, don't do this. Don't make this same mistake. Like if you have a last gen version of your game, you might want to reconsider it unless it's, like 8 or 16-bit or kind of an old school style of game, because you don't want to have a product that is just straight up broken because of, last gen hardware. You know what I mean? But it all kind of comes together now. It's like, okay, that makes sense why you would scrap that old version. And now you have this version. And unfortunately, you have some disappointing news that comes along with this version. And it almost kind of makes you wonder, like, because I think this game was originally slated for last year as well and got delayed. So it almost makes you wonder, like, maybe there's going to be some other performance issues, or maybe there's something going on with this game that's kind of just not clicking from a technical standpoint. Now, one other thing I came across on Twitter was that one of the devs actually at Rocksteady, so their kind of sister studio under WB, is kind of going to bat for this, kind of defending them, as some devs do on Twitter, but also causing some drama that I think is just completely unnecessary. And it all started with this developer saying, "I wish gamers understood what 60 FPS means in terms of all the things they lose to make the game run that fast, especially taking into account that we have a current gen console that's not much better than the last gen one." And I think he's actually talking about the Xbox Series S, because I've seen a lot of kind of conversation around that console and its technical abilities. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, though. Someone replied to him, and basically he said, "Every time there's news about a game skimping out on basic features, you always get that one dev tweet with hundreds of likes, but it's really hard to do. Your game costs $70 and all PS5, Xbox Series S games have 60 FPS. Stop asking people to lower their already low standards for you." That's a little much, but I see what he's trying to say there. And I kind of agree to a certain extent that you see these developers kind of cry out in that regard. But the dev replied, "I don't know if you knew this, but $60 in 2000 is $93 right now due to inflation. We're undercharging you for games and have been for 2 decades. Pay us what we're worth." I'm going to stop right there. Because us as consumers, it's not our job to pay you. It's our job to buy what you're selling. If your product does not meet our standards as consumers, or even our perceived standards, that's on you. We're not going to buy your product. You know what I mean? Don't tell your consumers to pay you what you're worth. Prove it to them through your product. I can't stand this mentality. I can't stand it. It just drives me absolutely nuts, because first of all, game developers make damn good money. Game development is a very high technically skilled job. A lot of coding, a lot of very technical work that they do, and they all make low to high 6 figures or more. Easy. Very easy. And that's no chump of change, if you know what I mean. So to sit here and complain that no one's going to pay you what you're worth, that sounds like a you and your studio problem. You need to talk that up with your boss in your studio. Like, that's not a consumer problem. That's a you and the company that you work for problem. If you have that problem, you should take it up with them or find a new job. And I know it's not as simple as that, because there are a lot of other factors when you talk about changing jobs and all that stuff. I totally understand that. And personally, I sympathize with that, or empathize with that, I should say, is a better term. But I can't stand this mentality that, oh, we make video games, so you have to pay us a lot of money and you have to buy our product regardless of however we make it and we tell you what's going to make it. What? No, that's not how it works. That's not how the market works. You make a product and we'll tell you if we want it or not. And you have to sell us on that product. You're not doing a very good job at selling the product right now. So I can't just, that really drives me. It kind of just rubs me the wrong way. I'm sure you can tell, but it really, really rubs me the wrong way to come with that. Now, I will say, I do agree with him on one point about, though, we've talked about game prices, and he's right. Even before the crazy inflation we've seen in 2022, even at $70, that didn't keep up with inflation because we've been paying $60 for games for so long. And I think it was Sean Layden, formerly of PlayStation, who talked about the rising cost of making AAA games, and it's unsustainable. And I think that's why you see a lot of these big, developers and publishers going to live service models and just trying to find a way to recoup these high costs. So I agree with him in that regard. But I also think the other factor of that is, and I've talked about this before, is that I think the perception of game value has changed. And part of that change is driven by Game Pass. We talked about earlier the Scorn Reviews, right? Did some of those people leave, higher reviews because they didn't feel like they got burned because they didn't really have some sort of financial investment through having to buy the game? And then you see a lot of people out there talking about, I'm going to wait for Game Pass, or, there's so much what's the word I'm trying to say? Consternation around the $70 price tag with so many folks. So much of it. Now, don't get me wrong, $70 is a big chunk of change. I understand that. And if you can pay less for games, I totally understand that. But I think you also have to realize that the cost. If you want all of these big 500-hour open world, big AAA, big budget games, you're going to pay for it. Quite frankly, you have to. Otherwise, they're not going to be made. And that's just kind of the reality. So I do agree with him on just the principle that really games don't cost as much as they probably should. Which is also why we see other ways of monetization through, it used to be loot boxes, now it's battle passes, season passes, paid content, etc. Skins, all of that stuff. That's why they exist. Now, this developer kind of goes on, he rants on about, pay, game prices. He even talks about how, games are never finished. They're even older games have broken bugs and come out broken and stuff like that. And I get that. And, so I think someone says people's wages have also barely increased. And he's like, yeah, I know, ours too. And it's like, dude, everyone's feeling that. Like, I can't stand complainers. I'll leave it at that. Let's see. There's one here that says, one person said, we don't pay you, bud. The corpo that's making record profits despite the cost the game does. He's like, who do you think they will pass the cost on to if we all ask for pay raises? I mean, yeah, that's fair, I guess. But I don't the point I want to make with this little developer drama is like, I don't understand why you would subject yourself to that. Like, why is this the hill you want to die on for this game? Especially when you kind of shifted the conversation to price, and then you want to complain about your wages, that you don't get paid enough, no one appreciates you, blah, blah, blah. Like, why? Why would you do that? I don't understand. I have to imagine from a developer standpoint that when you see kind of this news come out and you see kind of the sentiment online, maybe the disappointment around your product, that you would kind of, something that you've put, years into, that you're super passionate about, you want to go up and defend it. So I can empathize with that to a certain degree, but I also don't understand why you would make this the hill to die on. It doesn't seem worth it, because you're not going to, whose mind are you going to change? It's not your job to sell the product per se. I don't know. I don't see the point in especially in some of these online, really on Twitter. I mean, come on, Twitter is just toxic as it is. And like, why would you do that? I don't understand that one. But I go back to my point with, you have to have a strong value proposition, and for any product, right? Whatever your product is, video game or not, you have to have a strong value proposition for your consumers. And if you don't have that, and then you're going to sit here and blame said potential consumers, what do you expect is going to happen? That's like we see might get in my soapbox here just a little bit, but we see that so often with a lot of the liberal media, I'm talking outside of gaming, as well as some of the entertainment properties we see come out. For example, like She-Hulk, that series, that Marvel series, that it really got a lot of people talking, for better or worse. Or that movie that came out called Bros, I think it was. It's that like gay rom-com. And that movie bombed. And the director has basically blames like straight people or, conservatives or whatever for his movie bombing. And it's like, dude, we aren't even your target audience. Like, you really expect conservatives to go see your movie about like gay couples or like a gay rom-com? And I don't know. Blaming your audience for your lack of success or for lack of being able to sell your shitty product is not the way to go to get and sell your product. That's my point. I bring up Bros because I think that's a classic example where his movie bombed and he blames his audience for it bombing instead of taking accountability, personal responsibility for saying, maybe I didn't make the movie people wanted to see. And I think it's as simple as that. So this news, again, I find it disappointing. I'm very skeptical of this game. I'm not going to pick it up as of right now. There's other games I would much rather spend my time with, quite frankly. I'll be interested to see how this game kind of reviews, what people think of it. Maybe it's one I get to eventually, because I love the Arkane games. Genuinely, I think those games are fantastic. But Gotham Knights to me just doesn't look that great. And this is just kind of another one of those things where like I'm just not getting good vibes from this game. Like there's something that feels off about it. So we'll see when it comes out. Like I said, we'll see when it comes out. We'll keep an eye on it. Curious to know how many of you out there are excited to play it. Let me know down in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. And that's all I got for you guys today. Went on, honestly, a little bit longer than I thought we would. Just hit the hour mark, according to my timer over here. And I'm surprised. I had a few rants, got on my soapbox a little bit, but that's what's going to happen. It's going to happen. That's what the podcast is for, It's going to happen. So thank you all again for your love, kindness, and support. Hope you guys appreciated the topics we talked about this week. Again, remember, question of the week. What are some of your favorite scary games? Next week, I'll share probably a top 10, some of my favorite scary games. We'll kind of have that discussion, but I want to get you guys involved to highlight and spotlight some of your favorite scary video games as we creep in to the Halloween and spooky season. So let me know. Hope you guys stay safe out there. Play lots of video games. I will talk to you guys next. Actually, before we do that, last thing, just a little reminder. Remember, new episodes of the show go live each and every week, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can hit me up on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast, available. Make sure you share it with your friends. I think that's the big thing. Share the podcast with your friends that you think would be interested. Help us out with the show. Leave us ratings. I'd appreciate all of that to kind of get us out there a little bit and help the podcast grow. I need you out there to help me. That's all I can ask for. Don't need money, right? I don't need your money. I just need you to help me get the word out. That would be awesome. So again, thank you. Hope you guys do well. I will talk to you all next week. And until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.